I will focus on Alfa Group in my strictly personal capacity. In general, our association does not track oligarchs or deal with individual sanctions, though we campaigned for the Magnitsky Act as the human rights framework for them when it was going through Congress 10 years ago. But what transpired around Alfa in just this past month, and some of this Ilya mentioned, does make it a human rights issue because it has done something that no other oligarchs have done. It has taken advantage of Russia's most vulnerable groups, including human rights defenders and even political prisoners, to recruit them into its laundromat machine. So this will be a dense and complex story, but I will be moving fast. I want just to show something on the screen. So Alfa is a web of companies around the globe owned by a bunch that I will call here alpha males, because there are no females among their leadership. And they are among the very few oligarchs that predated Putin and stayed at the top to this day. I like Ilya's reasoning about Kremligarchs, but I still call them oligarchs because even though they do not have as much power over the Kremlin as they used to, but their financial power over millions of Russians, over small and medium businesses who need banking and access to the market is overwhelming. Alfa's claim to being special is that formally speaking, they are fully private, which 20 years ago was a music to Western ears. So Mikhail Friedman was, he is the Alfa super male, I would call him, and its founder, he was awarded Golden Plate along with Hillary Clinton and other dignitaries. And a full year after Putin's annexation of Crimea, Piotr Avin, that Ilya mentioned, who led Alfa Bank, got an award from Kennan Institute for Russian Studies in Washington, to which Alfa had given tons of money. My teacher of 25 years ago, and the former director of that institute, Peter Redaway, was the only one to question from the start the wisdom of taking Alfa money, but his warnings were dismissed. Last year, they revoked Avin's award, but not the phrasing, due to sanctions. That is not due to any intrinsic issues with having honored him. So today we have 4 alpha males under sanctions by major democratic powers as enablers of the Putin's inner circle, except by the US, which only sanctions some of their firms, not the individuals. Of course, alpha males are fighting the sanctions in court, and they deny any financial or political relationship with the Kremlin. Remember that. So here they are meeting with the boss. Friedman on the left, Avin on the right, both from the Kremlin's website. And Alfa has actively shaped Russia's domestic and foreign policy for longer than Putin did. Some of this forensic evidence is widely known. For example, that Avin, as minister in Russia's first post-Soviet government, essentially helped Putin's rise. Alfa has both hired and supplied top government officials. One of them, Vladislav Surkov, was among the most powerful people around Putin and most responsible for domestic repression and aggression in Ukraine. Other Alfa execs went to the legislature and they all voted for annexations and for war. Before and after Putin's first election, Avin was very vocal in many places, urging him to emulate Augusto Pinochet in Chile and to use totalitarian methods to push through radical economic reform and redeem his promise to make Russia great again. Alfa actively pursued their and the Kremlin's interests in the Middle East, including Iran, Iraq, and Israel. In Israel, they launched $1 million prize at the time of Putin's visit there. The prize was given by Prime Minister Netanyahu to Jewish people in the diaspora that he really needed to be courting. And actually, going back to something that Olga said, if you look at the award committee for this Genesis Prize in Israel, it assembled all the right-wing politicians, not just from Israel, but also from Italy, from the party of Silvio Berlusconi, one of the closest Putin's the Kremlin regime partners in Italy, as noted by a liberal Jewish newspaper Forum. For over 3 years after Putin sent troops to Ukraine, Alfa kept servicing Russia's war industry, and then it declared it would stop doing it to reduce its international risks. And Alfa also denied banking services to at least some human rights and opposition groups. Alexei Navalny was a notable exception. 10 years ago, when another oppositionist, Sergei Mitrokhin, stated that Alfa supports Navalny, Alfa sued for libel without explicitly denying that support and lost that case. Now, on Alfa's use and abuse of disadvantaged groups. And this will be about some of the communities that I personally belong. First, inside Russia, Friedman and Hahn helped the Kremlin take control of the Russian Jewish Congress, the main Russian partner of Jewish organizations worldwide. When then US State Secretary John Kerry was visiting Israel, RCC, as well as Friedman and Hahn separately, published an open letter to Netanyahu on behalf of 100 famous Russian Jews urging him not to give in to US pressure on the peace process. And this is just 3 years ago. Russia's foreign minister meets with RCC to praise them for collaboration. In the West, Alfa weaponized philanthropy, setting up Genesis Philanthropy Group that gave millions to UJA and its affiliates in exchange for influence. UJA is the United Jewish Appeal Federation of New York. It's the oldest, the largest, and most respected Jewish philanthropy in the West. Its network of affiliates receives about $200 million per year from New York City budget only. They provide vital services. They were the lifeline for Soviet-era refugees and remain the gatekeeper to any funding for services to Russian-speaking immigrants. Alfa started giving to it when UJA was losing revenue due to the global financial crisis, from which Alfa was bailed out by the Kremlin. What it funded was so-called Russian Jewish identity building, which was the code word for nationalism and insularity. Alfa money placed some of its enablers on UJA board, and coincidentally, some of its immigrant services were defunded. Those critical of the oligarchs were silenced and locked out of access to UJA and to community media. And that was something that I personally had to observe. For Jews in Ukraine, Alfa created super expensive Holocaust memorial project. Joseph Zisels, one of the most respected Ukrainian Jewish leaders, called it part of Russia's hybrid war. Now, one slide I decided not to show, but I will tell you what. It's about one example of Alfa's relationships in the US. And the name of that relationship is Mr. Edward Mermelstein. Mr. Mermelstein is a luxury real estate lawyer and politician. As reported by Voice of America, he has helped oligarchs invest in New York, including in real estate. He is also on record in the paper called The Real Deal, which is all online, asserting that media claims about possible illegalities associated with foreign funding are largely ridiculous. And also on record explaining that the Kremlin annexed Crimea because, I quote, access to warm water ports is critical for Russia. Makes sense, right? I can't wait when Germany takes a piece of Italy for the same reason. He also claimed that Russian military was going to protect the Russian population in Crimea. Mr. Mermelstein directed New York office of a foundation of another Kremlin crony and Alfa business partner, Vexipert, who was later sanctioned. After that, he sat on UJA board. He is president of UJA subsidiary Cogeco that also received millions from Genesis Philanthropy and furthered its identity agenda, and also took part, I witnessed that, in silencing dissident voices. He is listed in one of Alfa Mail's lawsuits, actually in a lawsuit against Fusion GPS, among those who are likely to have discoverable information about quite a bit of their activities. All this right now online in the open access. Where is he now? He is now Commissioner for International Affairs in New York City Mayor's office, its primary liaison with the diplomatic community. He is the Anthony Blinken of the city of New York. Back to Alfa. They are very aggravated by sanctions, which sounds like they actually do affect them, contrary to those who claim that sanctions don't work. So in spare time from litigation, they reach out to some of the anti-Putin people that Ilya mentioned, those who left the country and get their signatures on the letter of support drafted by Western lawyers. They also take advantage of one of the leaders of Nobel Prize-winning Memorial that was legally disbanded by the Kremlin, Yelena Zhimkova, and Ilya Yashin, one of Russia's youngest opposition leaders, who just got a lengthy sentence and will soon be turning 40 in penal colony. What's common to all these people? They are likely to be better off with even slight shift in Russia toward the good cops, which is what Alfa is positioning itself to them. But most of this backfired. Navalny's lieutenant, Leonid Volkov, as Ilya mentioned, first denied signing any letter. Then Volkov admitted signing on behalf of their foundation and had to resign. Dmitry Muratov, another Russian Nobel Prize winner, also denies signing a letter about sanctions. He only wrote in support of one of Friedman's projects, and yet something different is posted online with his signature, whether real or forged. Zhimkova and Memorial published a disclaimer that her letter did not represent the organization and was not about sanctions, but about, again, Avan's support for a specific project. What happens next? Last week, police comes for searches and interrogations to Memorial's key leaders and to its office, and make them witness in a criminal case on exoneration of Nazism. One of the favorite topics, by the way, of the charities, philanthropies funded by Alfa. May these two events be connected between themselves? I'll leave this as a question mark. But the end result is a serious damage to that other Russia that we'd like to see prevail, because Zhemkova, Yashin, Muratov are among the most credible and respected Russians internationally. And from the strategic point of view, Alfa may very well be the most harmful among Putin's crowd. So to conclude, I hope that democratic governments and human rights NGOs will look into this situation and think how to protect disadvantaged people and groups from Alfa's Western lawyers chasing them for letters of support, and also how to find ways to mitigate some of the harmful consequences of Alfa's international dependence.